You ever hear someone say, "I never saw it coming"? Yeah, that wasn't me. I saw the signs. Not neon lit, flashing red warnings, but quiet ones. Subtle. Like how she stopped pausing her music when I walked into the room. Or how she'd started wearing perfume to Zoom meetings. But the thing about suspicion is, it doesn't make the truth hurt less. If anything, it just prepares you to bleed slower. It was a Tuesday. Always a Tuesday for some reason. The kind of ordinary day people forget, unless it ends your marriage. Her name was Alicia. We'd been together 9 years, married 5. She used to laugh like she meant it. The kind of laugh that could derail your whole bad day and reroute it straight into maybe things aren't so bad territory. Lately, though, it had gone silent. Like she'd put her joy in storage. I kept thinking maybe I'd misplaced it. That night, she came home late. Again. I had drinks with Natalie, she said, kicking her heels off by the door like she lived in a sitcom. Except Natalie had posted a story 2 hours ago of her cat, in pajamas, at home. Oh yeah? I asked, not accusing. Just opening a door she didn't even glance at. MHM. She tossed her coat over the back of the chair I always sat in, never bothering to look up. Long day. I'm exhausted. And there it was. The script. The sigh. The practice fatigue. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was exactly the kind of bad acting you see in high school plays, convincing only if you want to believe it. I didn't say anything else. Just made myself a cup of tea and sat on the couch. The silence sat between us like an extra guest. And then came the message. Unknown number. Heard the news. You good? No name. No context. Just that. But I knew. Oh, I knew. I stared at the screen, then looked at Alicia. She was scrolling, smiling faintly. Not at me. At someone who apparently made her laugh more than I could these days. She didn't even notice I'd left the room. And that was the moment I realized the affair wasn't the betrayal. The betrayal was how easy I was to replace. I didn't confront her that night. Or the next. That's not how this version of me operated. The old me, the guy who still believed in mutual respect and honest talks, he packed up and left right around the time Alicia started sleeping with her phone face down. Instead, I started collecting. Not revenge. Not yet. Just clarity. I became a quiet archivist of betrayal. Screenshot here. Receipts there. A folder on my laptop named Work Expenses, filled with hotel bookings that sure didn't scream corporate training. I wasn't sleeping, but that wasn't new. Alicia snored like nothing was wrong, like the weight of a double life didn't even dent her REM cycle. One night, while pretending to scroll mindlessly beside her in bed, she giggled. Actual, out loud, teenager-in-love giggle. Not for me, obviously. Her screen was dimmed, but not enough. The message read, "You make me feel more alive than I have in years." And my wife? She typed back. "Then bring me back to life again Friday night." I didn't even flinch. Not because I wasn't devastated, but because that was the 5th time I'd caught her planning these little resurrection parties. That Friday, I followed her. No trench coat, no spy gear. Just a hoodie and the sort of emotional detachment that only comes from watching someone lie with their whole chest for months on end. The motel was out by the interstate. She parked around back, like amateurs do when they think hiding from the front desk clerk means hiding from the universe. I watched from the gas station across the street. They laughed as they walked in together. She touched his arm the way she used to touch mine in restaurants. When we were new. When she still looked at me like I was a surprise, not a chore. She never looked at me like that anymore. I didn't go inside. I didn't throw a rock through the window or cause a scene. I went home, sat on the couch, ate leftover takeout, and watched a rerun of Jeopardy. Because here's the thing no one tells you about heartbreak, it doesn't always scream. Sometimes, it just sits in your favorite chair and finishes your pad thai. The morning after her motel adventure, Alicia walked in wearing the same coat but a different perfume. Sweet. Foreign. It lingered longer than her excuses. "Sorry, I didn't text last night," she said casually, dropping her bag on the counter. "My phone died." Of course it did. Right after she texted, "Bring me back to life." I nodded. "Rough meeting." She blinked, caught off guard. "Yeah. Super draining." I sipped my coffee, pretending it wasn't laced with bitterness. Not from the beans, those were Colombian. The bitterness came from how easily she lied with a straight face. By then, I was living in our house like a squatter in someone else's dream. My toothbrush was still in the cup. My slippers still by the bed. But I didn't feel like I existed anymore. She was always rushing. Always just about to leave. We used to joke about being two introverts in a trench coat. Now we were just a timeshare of silence. I started moving things. Quietly. My books from the shelf. My coats from the closet. My name from the lease. Digitally at first, then literally. She didn't notice. You know what that tells you? Everything. Then came the envelope. A small, hand-addressed one I found stuffed in her purse when she left it open on the couch. I wasn't snooping. I was reaching for the remote. The universe snooped for me. Inside, a card. Can't wait to see you in Nashville. Our secret little reset button. Signed, J. No hearts. No lipstick kiss. Just a man who didn't need to write love notes anymore because apparently he'd already rewritten my wife. And still, I didn't explode. I didn't scream. I just sat there on the floor with the envelope in my hands and realized. This was grief in slow motion. The kind where no one dies, but someone disappears anyway. That night, I started making real plans. Not for revenge. Not yet. But for an exit that wouldn't look like a breakdown. Because if I was going to burn this house down metaphorically, I wanted to make sure I took only what was mine, and left behind only what she earned. I started with the screwdriver. Not a metaphor. A literal one. It sat in the junk drawer next to a tangle of rubber bands, expired coupons, and that one pin we both liked but never refilled. I took the screwdriver and began disassembling the desk we built together. IKEA hex key. 2 hours of cursing and making up. Back then, every bolt was a tiny memory. Now, each screw felt like a release. I packed backwards. Not in terms of order, but logic. Most people start with clothes, toiletries, the essentials. I began with the items that held the most invisible weight. The things that would sting if I left them behind. Like the coaster I got her from Portland that she never used. Like my dad's mug, the one she always said clashed with the kitchen vibe. Like the copy of East of Eden she rolled her eyes at whenever I reread it. None of these were expensive, but they were mine. So I wrapped them in t-shirts and tucked them into a box labeled Garage because I knew she wouldn't open that one until spring, if at all. Alicia was out, of course. Yoga or brunch or networking, depending on which version of herself she felt like being that week. I stopped keeping track. Her calendar looked like it belonged to a person trying to outrun stillness. I loaded the first box into my trunk and stood in the driveway for a long time. The sun was low. The neighborhood kids were chalking hopscotch onto the sidewalk like nothing was crumbling inside the beige house on the corner. Like a man wasn't dismantling a marriage between laundry cycles. I didn't move fast. Every trip inside was a chance to second guess. But I didn't. Because this wasn't about anger anymore. It was about dignity. You know how people say the opposite of love is hate? Nah. Hate is just love dressed up in armor. The real opposite of love is indifference. And that's what she gave me every day now. Not rage. Not apologies. Just blank space. As if I'd turned into one of those background characters in a dream, vaguely familiar, irrelevant to the plot. So I packed. I left her the big stuff, the bed, the couch, the air fryer she said she couldn't live without. Let her cook her affair partner some artisanal zucchini chips in it. I even left the TV. That hurt a little. Not because of the cost, but because it was the one thing in our house that had never lied to me. When I got to the closet, I paused. There was a box on the top shelf, shoved all the way back. I knew what it was. Cards. Notes. That one dumb photo stripped from the carnival, the one where we made those stupid faces like kids on a sugar rush. I pulled the box down, sat on the edge of the bed and opened it. Every memory inside that cardboard coffin whispered, "Remember who you were?" Yeah, I remembered. I was the guy who left her love notes in her lunch bag. The guy who learned how to make risotto because she said no one ever had. The guy who once drove 3 hours to get her a specific brand of tea after her miscarriage because she said it made her feel warm inside. I wasn't perfect. Not even close. But I showed up. And now? Now I was a ghost in a house full of my own echoes. I closed the box. Didn't take it with me. Some memories belonged to the crime scene. By the time Alicia came home, I had loaded the last box and left the key on the kitchen counter. I didn't write a note. Didn't send a text. She'd figure it out. What surprised me most was the feeling. Not grief. Not liberation. It was something quieter. Like standing in the eye of a hurricane you didn't even know had been swirling around you. I checked into a short-term rental across town. Small place. Smelled like lemon cleaner and new beginnings. No memories in the walls. No lipstick-stained glasses in the sink. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just unpacked my bag, put the mug on the counter, and sat in silence. I could still feel the echo of her laughter. Not from the present, but from years ago, when it was real. when it hadn't been rented out to someone else on Friday nights. I poured myself a drink, sat back, and for the first time in months, I slept without waiting for the sound of a phone buzzing face down on the nightstand. Alicia didn't call right away. She waited a whole 48 hours, like she was giving me time to come crawling back, probably assuming I'd be sleeping in my car or on some friend's couch, begging for forgiveness I didn't know. On the third morning, her name lit up my phone like a fire alarm in an empty church. Alicia, 6:57 a.m. Missed call 1. No voicemail. Just enough of a signal flare to say, "I've noticed you're gone." Like she was marking attendance, not checking on someone she once promised forever to. By noon, a text followed. "We need to talk." 4 words. No greeting. No punctuation. Just that. Like she was setting an appointment for dental work. I didn't respond. Not out of cruelty, just clarity. She hadn't wanted to talk for months. She wanted me to stay quiet, stay useful, stay out of the way. And I had done all 3. Until I didn't. That evening, I took a walk around the new neighborhood. It was smaller, older. Real people lived here, the kind who still waved at each other from porches and knew which garbage bins belonged to which driveway. There was a bakery on the corner that smelled like cinnamon and peace. I hadn't smelled peace in years. I passed by a playground. A kid was trying to fly a kite that refused to lift. His dad knelt beside him, explaining the wind. The boy wasn't listening. He was laughing. Pure, unfiltered joy. It hit me then. No one should have to beg for that feeling in a relationship. The next day, Alicia showed up. I heard the knock before I saw the silhouette on the frosted glass. I didn't even have to look. There's a knock people use when they feel entitled to be heard. I opened the door slowly. She looked smaller. Not physically, just reduced. Like someone who finally realized their backup plan packed a suitcase. "Can I come in?" she asked, voice tight. I stepped aside. She walked in, eyes scanning the room like a stranger in a hotel lobby. "This is nice," she said, gesturing to my makeshift living room. A single armchair, a folding table, and a lamp that hummed when it got too warm. "It's temporary," I replied. "So is this, I hope," she said, and that's when it started. The pitch. The performance. She launched into all the things you're supposed to say when your house of cards collapses. That she was confused. That the affair wasn't serious. That it only happened once, a lie. That she'd been lost, but now she saw how much she missed me. I didn't interrupt. I let her spill her version of the truth all over my clean floor. "I didn't think you'd leave," she said finally. "I didn't think you had it in you." There it was. Not regret. Not remorse. Surprise. She wasn't sorry I left. She was just stunned I had the audacity to. I stood up, walked to the small kitchen, poured water into a mug that said "be kind," rewind, took a sip, then another. Not because I was thirsty, but because I knew the silence made her nervous. When I turned around, I said, "You were right." She blinked. "About what?" "I didn't have it in me, until you carved it out." That stopped her cold. The room filled with that specific kind of quiet only truth can create. "I don't know what to say," she muttered. "Then don't," I said. I walked to the door, opened it. She stood frozen, unsure whether to beg or walk out gracefully. In the end, she chose grace, or something that looked like it from a distance. But as she passed me, she said, "I hope you're proud of yourself." That part actually made me smile. "I am," I said. She left. I closed the door. And just like that, the weather changed. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't watching for storms. I was learning how to predict my own skies. The truth is, I never planned on revenge. I planned on dignity. Clean exits. The kind of silence that says more than yelling ever could. But sometimes silence isn't enough. Sometimes you need the echo of your absence to feel like a slap. And I was past the stage of subtle. It started with the emails. Alicia never changed her passwords, just reused variations of our anniversary. The woman could memorize a wine list from 2016, but couldn't be bothered to enable two-factor authentication. Her inbox was a museum of poor decisions. Reservations. Love notes. One particularly smug message titled, "Us, Everyone," from a man who thought exclamation points made infidelity romantic. But the real gem? A shared Google Doc labeled, "Our Future." Yes, really. Inside, lists of potential wedding venues in Spain, pet names, seriously, Snuggle Mammoth, and a spreadsheet titled, "Budget, Life Reset." It wasn't just betrayal, it was planning. This wasn't an affair. It was a succession. And she'd made me the ghost in her origin story. So I printed every page. I didn't make a scene. I didn't send them to her boss or his wife. Yes, he was married, 2 bonus points for class. No, I had something better. Something quieter. Her birthday was coming up. Big party. She made sure I knew about it, as if rubbing it in my face would make me magically forget the woman she used to be. That night, I dressed in black. Not like a movie villain. More like someone attending a funeral, because in a way, I was. The death of her facade. The venue was a rooftop bar downtown. Warm lights. Polished cement. The kind of place where people toast with overpriced cocktails and talk about investments they don't understand. I wasn't invited. But I didn't need to be. You see, her best friend still followed me on Instagram. She liked all my starting fresh posts, always with a supportive emoji. The moment she posted a story from the party, I knew exactly where it was. And more importantly, who was attending. I slipped in during the speeches. Nobody notices the guy in the corner when everyone's holding a glass of Prosecco. I waited until her slideshow began. Yes, Alicia made a slideshow. Photos of herself as a kid, then as a bride, then as a woman who claimed to have grown into her own brilliance. I let it roll, right up until slide 23. Then, without a word, I switched USB drives. The screen flickered once, then began displaying the other slideshow. Screenshots. Emails. Quotes from her Google Doc in bold Helvetica. Spain in spring. He'll never suspect. Snubble mammoth. I'm just buying time until he figures it out. You could have heard a credit score drop. The room didn't gasp. It froze. That kind of stillness you only get when someone hits the brakes too late and you're already in the intersection. And Alicia? She didn't scream. Didn't rush the screen. She just stood there, blinking. Like her brain was buffering and the Wi-Fi signal of her ego had finally dropped. I didn't stay for the fallout. I walked out as calm as I came in. No gloating. No pointing. Just the quiet satisfaction of someone who finally set the record straight, with receipts. By the time I got home, my phone had 5 missed calls. 2 from her. 3 from people who never bothered to ask how I was during the actual collapse of my life. I ignored them all. That night, I slept like a man who finally vacuumed the last crumb of guilt from the corners of his soul. Not because I hurt her, but because I stopped letting her rewrite the story. The next morning, I brewed coffee in silence. And this time, it didn't taste bitter. It tasted earned. They say shame travels faster than guilt. I believe it, because within 12 hours of my rooftop drop the mic slideshow, Alicia showed up at my door. Not alone. She brought company, a bottle of red wine, her favorite brand I always thought tasted like regret and floor polish. Her mascara was smudged just enough to suggest she cried, but not enough to risk waterproof. Strategic. Like everything else. I opened the door, leaned against the frame. No invitation. She looked me over like I was a stranger whose face she almost remembered. Can we talk? I don't have any more slides, I said. She didn't laugh. Good. That meant she knew this wasn't a punchline. We sat on the porch. I didn't invite her in. The inside of my place was peace, and she didn't belong there anymore. I deserved it, she said eventually. Every frame. Every word. I sipped my coffee and said nothing. Let the silence do its job. I was stupid. I thought I could. I don't know. Rewrite the ending. You didn't rewrite it, I said. You plagiarized it from every bad decision you've ever defended. She winced. I know. Then came the parade. Not of excuses, of apologies. Lined up, choreographed, rehearsed like an off-Broadway play written by someone who suddenly realized the theater was closing. I was lost. I didn't feel seen. I didn't plan it. It just happened. He doesn't matter. I miss who we were. Each one floated out into the summer air, lighter than truth but heavier than air. They bumped into each other mid-sentence, overlapped like cheap perfume. I let her talk until she ran out of confessions and started repeating them like a scratched record. Then I asked, "What do you want from me?" She blinked. "I don't know." "You do." She looked down at her hands, the wine bottle untouched between us. "I want us back. Or the chance to try." I nodded slowly, as if considering it. Then I looked her dead in the eye and said, "That version of us doesn't exist anymore." A pause. "I know," she whispered. "No, Alicia. I don't think you do. Because if you did, you wouldn't be sitting here thinking a speech and a bottle of Cabernet can walk me back into hell." She bit her lip. It wasn't hell. It wasn't heaven. Silence. "You want closure?" I asked. "Here it is. You didn't ruin us with one mistake. You eroded us. Slowly. Strategically. like a sculptor chiseling away at a statue she didn't think would ever fall. And now it's dust. I stood up. She stayed seated, staring out at the street, like maybe the answers were painted on the pavement. I walked to the door, opened it, not for her to come in, but to signal that we were done. She followed. At the threshold, she turned back. If I'd been honest earlier, you still would have lied later. Her mouth opened, then closed. She stepped off the porch, turned toward her car. She paused at the bottom of the stairs and said, "You know, part of me wanted to hurt you, but I never thought you'd hurt me back." That was the final nail. I shook my head, not out of disbelief, but because it was too on brand. "I didn't hurt you, Alicia. I just finally stopped helping you hurt me." She left. I didn't watch her drive off. I closed the door, locked it, and sat down at my little folding table. On the table sat my phone, buzzing again. Friends, acquaintances, mutuals I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly checking in. Some supportive, some nosy, but one message stood out. From someone I didn't expect. Her brother, Jake. "Just watched the highlight reel. Took guts. You okay?" I stared at the screen for a moment before replying. Never better. Because it was true. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to fix something broken. I was building something new. Starting with myself. A week passed. 7 full days of no texts, no voicemails, no sad Spotify playlists sent at 2 a.m. from Alicia. Just silence. And silence, as it turns out, is an excellent locksmith. It sealed every door I ever thought about reopening. I went back to work. My coworkers had seen the drama unfold, thanks to a few tactful partygoers who decided to leak the infamous slideshow to a group chat called Real Ones Only. Apparently, I'd gone viral. If by viral, you mean a limited run among emotionally devastated office workers and one really enthusiastic barista. No one asked me about it directly. Just the occasional nod, the subtle pat on the back, the unsaid "you good" behind every coffee machine glance. I was, for the most part. Then came the letter. Yes, an actual handwritten letter. In 2025. Like she thought using cursive would make betrayal look vintage. It came in a cream envelope. No return address. I opened it with the same caution you give a package that might contain either a thank you note or a raccoon. Inside, 3 pages of Alicia trying to rewrite the rewrite. She wanted to explain how things got ahead of her. How she was confused by the pressure of adulthood. How I was too good, and it made her feel inadequate. That part nearly made me laugh. I didn't finish the letter. I didn't burn it. I didn't save it. I shredded it. Because I wasn't archiving anymore. I was reclaiming. It's funny how betrayal rewires your instincts. I used to flinch at minor things, forgotten texts, silences that stretched a little too long. Now, I carried stillness like armor. It wasn't emptiness. It was space. And I was finally big enough to fill it. By Friday, I had a new routine. Early jog. Strong coffee. Jazz playing low while I answered emails. I read again, actual books. I remembered how to breathe without bracing for lies. And then, I saw her. Not Alicia. Him. The other guy. He was standing outside a wine bar, looking like someone had told him confidence was a cologne. He was alone. Probably waiting. Probably expecting the woman who made him feel like he was winning. I walked past him. Didn't break stride. Didn't make eye contact. But I must have passed close enough, because he turned. Maybe he recognized me. Maybe guilt's got a gravity of its own. Either way, he flinched. And I smiled. Because the best revenge was being a man who didn't need any. There's something weirdly ceremonial about deleting someone's contact. It feels small. Almost petty. Like deleting a digital ghost erases the haunting. But when I finally deleted Alicia's number, I didn't hesitate. I didn't even hover. Tap. Hold. Remove. Gone. That was the final string. The last loose thread in the sweater she'd been unraveling for a year. And suddenly, I felt warmer without it. Saturday afternoon, I drove to the lake. The same one we used to visit when things were good. Back when date nights didn't feel like hostage negotiations. This time, I came alone. I brought one thing with me, a notebook. Not a journal. Just a plain, cheap notebook. I started writing, not about her, but about what came next. The kind of house I'd live in. The kind of life I'd build. Not a fantasy, not revenge. Just blueprints. Honest ones. I wrote down truths. I am no longer someone's option. I will never beg for honesty. I can leave, and I did. That last one hit hardest. Because leaving sounds easy in stories. In real life, it's a demolition you have to walk away from without checking to see what's still standing. I watched the sun dip low over the water. Peaceful, unbothered. And that's when my phone buzzed. Not a message. A notification. Alicia had tagged me in a photo on social media. Of us. Old. Smiling. Before everything. The caption read, "Some things don't fade. Just lessons." I stared at it for a moment, then reported it for impersonation. Not because I was mad. Because I wasn't her lesson. I was the final exam she failed. Twice. Months passed. Not fast. Not clean. But steady. Healing rarely looks cinematic. It looks like a man finally choosing new furniture not based on shared opinions, but comfort, practicality, peace. One day, while walking past a bookstore, I saw her again. Alicia. She didn't see me. She was with someone. Not him. I knew him, probably. Or maybe a placeholder. Hard to tell. She laughed. That familiar tilt of her head. Same cadence. Same charm. But it didn't hit the same. Because I wasn't the same. I walked on. Didn't pause. Didn't watch. Just kept moving. Because here's the truth no one prints on sympathy cards. Some betrayals are blessings dressed like bruises. And when you finally stop bleeding, you realize you weren't broken. You were just being carved into something stronger. So I kept walking. Not to get away, but because I finally knew where I was going. And I didn't need to look back to get there.